All right, and we are back.
We're back.
Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea Show. This is a podcast where I sit down with my beautiful and lovely wife, Andrea, and we talk about a person who wrote a book about something that was pretty amazing or awesome or just interesting or fascinating, and we discuss it, and we kind of see what they've done and see if there's anything that we want to incorporate into our lives because, you know, we're trying to better ourselves and hopefully you are too. And it's been a while. It's been about a month or so.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys and good to be back.
Good to be seen.
Good to be seen, I guess. Hope you had a great summer.
Yeah.
Or if you're in that weird upside down part of the world, hope you had a good winter. You know, where the toilets flush the un-American way. But hopefully you had a great summer, and we're good to be back. And this is exciting because we've been talking about this guy for a long time, and you could probably guess who it's going to be. Today we are talking about the man himself, the crazy man, David Goggins, and this is his book Can't Hurt Me. Let me just put it up right there. And yeah, like we've been saying, this guy is...
Well, I think we reference him in just about like every podcast that we do.
Well, pretty much, yeah, because he's like the guy. Like, he's crazy.
Yes.
Like, he's insane, but he's a guy who's always pushing himself to like the absolute physical limits of like what is humanly possible, at least in terms of what you can take physically for like physical pain. Like,
Endurance.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes.
So he's amazing. So yeah, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Master your mind and defy the odds. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit different in that usually I have never read any of these books that Andrea talks, so we can have this conversation. I'm kind of learning at the same time that you're learning about it. But this one's a little different where I've read his book before.
You've listened to it.
I've listened to it a few times actually, because it's just a really good listen. And yeah, so I don't know, I might be helping explain a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. So, but anyways, without further ado, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. Let's learn about this guy.
So the book starts and it says, situation. You are in danger of living a life so comfortable that you will die without ever realizing your true potential. The mission is to unshackle your mind, ditch the victim mentality forever, own all aspects of your life completely, build an unbreakable foundation. So that's how the book starts.
Like, I love it. Like, that says everything. It's... Yeah. And if you've gathered from the stuff that we've ever talked about and we've done throughout the years, you just know that we're all about just personal responsibility. And if there's something that you want that you don't have, that you have to go out yourself and work and get it. Like, you can't just sit there and be like, poor me, play the victim and just let life go by.
Just accept things.
You can't do that. You have to make it happen for yourself.
Yes. And I think also personal growth has been huge for us as well. We're always pushing, always learning, always pushing ourselves forward. And he's the same. Yeah. He's the same way.
Absolutely.
So chapter 1 starts and he says, hell was a corner lot on Paradise Road. So this is in 1981 and he's in grade 1 and his brother Trunus Jr. is in grade 6. And a bit of a trigger warning, his childhood was...
We don't use that word here because that word triggers me.
I understand, but this one is pretty rough because his childhood was his father was extremely abusive to them. And so his dad was like kind of like this shady entrepreneur guy, and he owned like a Coca-Cola distribution concession at first, and then he built one of Buffalo's first roller skating rinks, and then he did a new one called Skateland, and the whole family had to work at this Skateland. And so if you want to explain what this place was like.
Yeah, so Skateland, you remember on those TVs, all those 70s or 80s movies, and the guys with the bell bottoms, the guys and girls, whatever, and they just have those roller skates, right? The 4 blades with the stop on the front of it. Yeah. You just go there, you just dance and go to the disco, and it's a place where you get food and drinks or whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's just on the family friendly side. Yeah. So what would happen is this place would open up kind of after school hours, it seems like, so 5 or 6 o'clock it would open up, and then so his wife and then David and his brother, they would just be working. So like he would just be dealing with getting the shoes, and the brother maybe he was doing something, the cooking or whatever, the roller skates. So they're all just doing various things to just operate the skate park. And so then what would happen was at around 10 or 11 o'clock, they had a nightclub that he built like over top, right? And then it ended up being like a really exclusive nightclub. So like all like high caliber people, like OJ Simpson was going there. This was before his Bronco incident. Rick James. I was gonna say Rick Grimes. Rick James. You know,
Sister Sledge.
Yeah.
Like,
so all those high funk guys. Like I don't even know if Prince would have been there.
I don't think so.
But anyways, just all these high profile kind of guys. Yeah. And then the dad would go up there and start serving the drinks and doing whatever. And he was doing lots of shady kind of deals as well too. So he was running prostitutes, I think, out from the States and into Canada. Because they're close to Windsor, I would imagine would be close.
No.
Oh, right. They're around
in Buffalo.
Buffalo, right.
Buffalo,
so that's
Niagara.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But anyways, yeah. So just
you know, that's geography.
Whatever. Whatever. Funny. Isn't there only one point of entry from the US to Canada? Anyway, so just a lot of under the table shady stuff that was going on. So lots of money and crime stuff and whatever, and like crooked politicians and stuff were there. Yes. So it was all kinds of bad news. So then the kids, when the skate park itself would close up, and then the music is blaring till like 2-3 in the morning, they would try to sleep in the office. And the mom would try to have like a family dinner kind of thing. But then, they wouldn't get home till like 3 or 4 a.m. after they counted all the money and whatever. And then they'd have to wake up at like 6 or 7 to go to regular school and to have this facade of being this well put together family, even though the dad was super abusive. I don't know if you want to, if there's any story that you want to.
Well, just one thing is like they lived in this really fancy neighborhood, and that's what he was saying. Like, even though from the outside, everything, they looked like a typical happy family, it was definitely not that way. And they drove really nice cars and had nice things and everything, but he was so abusive to them and controlling. Like he knew, he would watch the people come in to Skateland, and he knew how much was supposed to be in the register. So if anything was missing, they would get
someone would be getting the beat down.
Yes.
And to say like back then too, things were even overlooked. So there was one story he gives out where he'd beaten his wife really badly, that some neighbor called the cops because of noise, or maybe she called the cops. She called the cops. It was so bad, and then the cops came in. They saw her in the distance, like all bloody or whatever. And then the guy's like, "Well, you gotta keep your keep them in line." You know what I'm saying, or whatever. And then the cops just kind of let it go.
And they just kind of laughed. I guess you're right.
I don't know if they laughed or whatever, or they knew who he was, right? Because he's kind of a.
Just how the times were back then, unfortunately. And so he says, Goggins says, it was clear to us that as far as trueness and the law were concerned, it was open season and we were the hunted. So that's how he felt.
Right. So the kids, I mean, we're not going to get into any of the details of how badly he was beaten, but they were beaten all the time, the kids. And the way that David describes his beatings is like his father would do things in a way to provide like maximum psychological terror as well as physical. So an example would be, okay, well, go into the bedroom, take your pants down and lay down on the bed in the complete dark. So he never knew where his father was and when the strikes would come. So he'd make him wait. I don't know how long he made him wait or whatever, but the whole point is like,
you never
that
know.
Anticipation of having the beating coming, it's almost worse than the actual beating itself. And so those kinds of things. And it's like, these are just like not a slap across the face. It's like major beatings with whipping with the belt buckle and everything like that, right? So, and then of course having to hide the bruises and stuff at school and all that kind of things. And then so for him, I mean, he's living in this environment, so he's just constant stress and wound up like all the time.
So
which
fight or flight is always engaged.
So
you never know what's going to happen.
Causing lots of issues, learning disabilities and stuff growing up. So I think we'll get into that. But
so, and then the problem too is, so his mom and his dad, they weren't married, and so it was difficult for her to figure out how to leave him because she couldn't divorce him because they weren't married. So she had no money.
She has nothing. Yeah.
And so she's in this controlled environment where she doesn't have a job because she works at Skateland.
It's not even working. You're not on the payroll.
You're just living. Right. And so she doesn't have a credit card or name, like none of these things. So it's really difficult for her to leave. Yeah. But she does have a neighbor that helps her make a plan, tells her to like, okay, we'll just kind of nice him like at this one point, and then maybe you then ask him once he's kind of nice to you, then ask if he'll help you get a credit card in your name, which is what happened. Right. And then she was able to leave.
Yeah. So the friend is like, just make a plan. Like this, it has to be a long-term thing. Like you can't just up in the night go without having things. So I don't know if it took months to get this plan from an action to actually finally leaving.
Yeah.
But yeah, because when someone's controlling you, they take away your friends, they take away your family, and then they take away your financial freedom. Yes. So when you have nothing in your name, you can't even get a credit card if you don't have a job or nothing.
Yes.
You know, even I guess maybe if you're a new immigrant, you might be able to get something.
She was really young, so she didn't even really have have an education. Like she was young when they like got together.
Right.
So she was just in a really rough situation. Yeah. But eventually, the neighbor helps her.
Just totally controlled, right? I mean, that's
the neighbor helps her, and like they're able to escape.
Yeah.
And so eventually. So they go to her parents' house in Brazil, Indiana, from Michigan. And so they're there for a little while. The older brother ends up going back to the dad. But then he was enrolled in a school.
And I think because the older brother, for some reason, you know, the dad, you know, you latch on more to the eldest because you're like, that's your heir. I mean, he still laid him the beatdowns, but it seems like it wasn't as bad as like what David got as an example.
Yeah, I think so. So he was enrolled in a new school, but because of all of this, and he goes through it really clearly, like all this toxic stress that he was under. He wasn't like, he was so behind. He had like a learning disability.
Yeah.
And he goes through everything that he was going through. And he had this one teacher, was Sister Catherine. She was a nun at this school. And she was the only one, like she really saw that he was struggling and saw, well, he doesn't learn the way other kids learn. And so it was just helping him, figuring out a way he learned. Like she didn't give up on him. And she really like stuck with him to help him learn.
The reason this is important because honestly, if you have a kid that's, you know, whatever, you're in a grade 5, but you're reading at a grade 1 level, or you can't seem to be, you're falling way behind.
Yes.
And I think he developed like a speech impediment as well too. Like he was stuttering like bad, and he had all kinds of issues, like he was wetting the bed and stuff like that too. So we glossed over this, like the first few chapters of his early life. So like if you read the book, which we highly suggest, it's bad. Like we haven't gone over the beatings and all the different things that has happened when he was growing up. So he was in such bad shape. So, but this,
like his hair was falling out. Like it was awful. I mean, this is a kid who's like, he's just a kid. He's like not even 10 years old at this point.
Or whatever, like however young really he is when they finally leave. So, but you just imagine the school system, even today, like that kid would just be tossed to the side, put in with the special kids or whatever. And there's a little story of him going with the special kids and be like, wow, these guys are crazy kind of thing, right? Right. He was just messed up because of what happened to him. But
these kids actually had psychological issues.
One kid would set fires to everything. The other kid pissing in the corner or whatever. It's like, oh, these kids are crazy. But she, like the first teacher had it, which is like, lucky for him to have some teacher that she just kept pushing and she wouldn't take any bullshit from him. I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like, no, you're going to do this. And I'm going to take as much time as I need to make sure that you're going to learn this stuff. So I don't know if there was lots of after hour stuff or whatever, but
he says she wasn't willing to shirk her responsibility and blame my academic struggles on learning disabilities. She didn't know my story. All that mattered to her was that I turned up at her door with a kindergarten education and it was her job to shape my mind. And that's the kind of teachers, like I got chills because like that's the kind of teacher
you don't find teachers like that nowadays, because the teachers are all about, I mean,
it's up to the education system itself.
It's a meat grinder. It's a factory where they take kids in, spit out, workers, go work, and then whatever, right? It's not about the actual kids and those teachers that are there to actually teach. Maybe there's some of them that they go in with the best intentions, but the system just beats them down so much that it's like, well, I can't even teach the way I want to because of the way the system is. Anyways.
And so what's interesting about his book is that after each chapter, he has like a challenge for you to do.
Right.
And so after this first chapter about his childhood, it's about, he says like, list your excuses and the reasons why you shouldn't succeed and use those excuses to like fuel to get to your goal and that sort of thing. And like he says, he should have been a statistic. Kids that have dealt with domestic violence, they have an increased risk of all different types of diseases, like obesity, alcoholism, drug abuse.
So you just need some kind of way to cope with
to what you've been
especially
through.
If you're a child and you can't really process what the hell's going on, or you just, it's like it's one thing he mentioned too is that even though you're born and raised in that kind of environment, you still know that there's something wrong. Like you still know that it's not right, but you don't really know how to process that because you see other kids going to school and they're like, well, they're not falling asleep at school, or they don't have bruises all the time, and like, what's going on here? And so you even know that something's wrong.
So But yeah, so I love that, like, at the end of each chapter there's a takeaway, and I like that's what I love about these books that we do.
One thing to mention here real quick, the difference between the book and the audiobook. The audiobook is really fantastic because not only does it have the book, but at the end of each chapter, or even after separate sections, he will actually talk to the person who's doing the reading, and they're like, wow, David, let's expand on that. Let's talk about it. So they'll talk about
it's like
a part of the chapter for like half an hour or whatever, and just kind of delve more into the story. And
you get so many extras in there. Yeah. It's really awesome.
Yeah. So it's like a full blown, it's like 12 hours. Like the reading itself is like maybe 6 hours, but then the whole thing is 12 hours, right? Because they spend that much time diving more deep into what's going on. Yeah. So it's really, really fascinating. So highly recommend to listen to the audiobook if you like audiobooks. Whatever.
Absolutely. One of the best ones I've listened to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So then him and his mom, like, obviously they don't have anything. They're super, super poor.
Oh yeah.
She's working, but she's also going back to school because she knows education is what's going to get her like a better job and a better future. And so she does manage to meet this new guy, and his name's Wilmoth, and it's like kind of like a new beginning. They're going to move to Indianapolis to be with him. And he's become like this really great father figure to David.
Yeah.
And then like this guy can't get a break. And so he was killed the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
And when David was in grade 8, when he was 14. So it's just like they can't, like, you feel so bad listening to that story because it's like they can't get a freaking break. You finally find some happiness with like a good guy, and then they
don't really know even how he died, whether it might have been kind of shady or whatever. Not sure if he was into anything shady or he just happened to get mixed up with somebody shady, or who knows, right? So
it's hard to know. So then he gets into basketball in high school, and he plays for like a couple years, and he switches schools back and forth. And so when he goes to this other kind of more rural school back in Brazil and Indiana where his grandparents are, they play a different way. And so he gets cut from the junior team. So that's really demoralizing. And he's like, well, what's the freaking point of even going to school if I can't play basketball? Right. So there's that. And then added to that, it's a small rural town in Brazil, and the white supremacy is a huge thing there. He was saying like in 1995, the KKK marched down Brazil's like main street on Independence Day. So he's dealing with extreme racism at his school and within the community. So that's pushing him down. But not only that, then it's like to combat that, he's just doing things to like be living up to the stereotypes, right? And so that's kind of, he's not being the best person he can be. Yeah,
so like if you think I'm going to be a gangster, well, I might as well just dress up as one and act like one and blare my music really loud or whatever.
Exactly.
He talks a lot about, in his book, being the only.
Yes.
Like, excuse me, like if you're, like from his school, he's like the only black guy in this whole school. So it's like, I'm the only one there. And he talks about when he's in the Navy, I was like one of the only black guys in the Navy as well too, right?
Exactly,
so, but he always says too, it's like, don't let that be your excuse to not be able to succeed of just being the only, use it as fuel or whatever. So he gets into a lot of that. Take your situation, might be negative, but turn it into a positive, right?
Use it as fuel. Yeah,
exactly.
And so he was doing horribly at school. Obviously, he's not playing basketball, so he's like, there's no point in going. And he gets a letter from the school saying, you're not going to be able to graduate if you don't, like, number one, improve your grades, and number two, like, show up.
And his mom saw this letter too. Yeah. So she's like, what's going on?
Yeah. Here? And so what inspired him to actually start to change was he realized he wasn't going to be able to reach his goal of going into the Air Force. And so his grandfather had been in the Air Force. And his grandfather was like a super proud guy. He was like always wearing his uniform and like sitting on his porch.
Right.
And then he heard, I don't know what it was. It was some sort of like summer camp or something he went to. And he heard this pararescue guy's story about almost dying, jumping out of a plane.
Must have been giving a seminar to some students or something like that.
I think so. Yeah. And so it totally inspired him because this guy was like, should have been dead because he hit the ground without his parachute open, basically.
There was an accident when he was skydiving, his parachute got messed up and like just hit the ground. Just imagine what it'd be like.
They were like, number one,
jump out of a plane and just hit the ground.
Yeah. And so everybody was like, number one, you should be dead.
How's he still alive?
And number two, like, there's no way you're going back. And he did.
He ended up not full recovery, but
And so I think that was
pretty amazing, spectacular recovery.
And so he was like, it was proof that like it's possible to
anything's possible.
Transcend anything that doesn't kill you, basically, right? And so that really inspired him, and he wanted to go into the Air Force for those two reasons. And so he takes you have to take a test to be able to go into the Air Force, or I think anything.
Any army type thing, there's always a test. Yeah, like an aptitude test.
Yeah, and so this one's called the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, also known as the ASVAB. And so he failed it, and he wasn't able to, like, he wouldn't be able to go to the Air Force.
Yeah.
So he gets real with himself, and he goes into the mirror, and he just starts shaving his head.
That's when he starts shaving. Yeah.
And he starts like looking at himself in the mirror and just like lecturing himself, like, if you want to do this, then this is what you have to do to reach this goal, kind of thing. And so that's what he calls his like accountability
mirror.
And and it became a ritual that he would just do that every single day. And so he would start doing things like, well, you need to be able to do like cut the grass without being asked. You need to like shape up your appearance, and you need to study. And so that accountability mirror was like a big thing for him too.
And it's a huge thing too that he says in his book, and I think it's one of those extra things in the chapters, is look yourself in the mirror and write down all your weaknesses, or write down all the things that you do that are holding you back. You know, just be accountable to yourself, you know.
Well, and not only that, but like what he says is like, he says like, nobody likes to hear the hard truth. Individually and as a culture, we avoid what we need to hear most. You are giving up instead of getting hard. Tell the truth about the real reasons for your limitations, and you will turn that negativity into jet fuel. And it's true. People are instead of saying like you're fat, you need to lose weight, it's like, oh no, that's okay, like, you know, we want to be body positive. And it's like, no, you're unhealthy and you need to lose weight. So let's not sugarcoat it. You need to face the problem in order to solve it.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the whole body positivity thing, and that's a perfect example of why things are just so like messed up. Like, listen, don't shame people for who they are or whatever. Just like, obviously there's some kind of underlying issue as to why they're like that, whether it's medically or it's emotionally, whether you use food for comfort or whatever, like I do. And it's like, you got to be real with yourself. Like, this is it's not healthy.
No,
it's not healthy. And you're like that. Okay, so what can we do to make it better and to make you get down to something healthy? You don't have to.
No one's asking you to have 6-pack abs.
You don't have to look like Schwarzenegger. Yeah, all this stuff. But let's not dilute our whole society saying this is healthy. It's the magazines, the fitness magazines have these 300-pound people that are like, hey, look at me, I'm healthy. Like, no, you're not. You know, and it's one thing to like, oh, that's a person who's getting healthy, but that's not what it's marketed. It's like, well, this is just normal now, and this is okay. It's like,
no, it's not.
And I understand that here in Western society, more like obesity is just like, it's an epidemic beyond.
It is.
You know, it's so bad. Like, like at least half the people or something like that. Like, it's crazy, right? So now you got to normalize it because, whatever. But anyways, that's a perfect example of not being true and honest to yourself, and just being honest about the realities of what your world is like, or what the world is like.
Just taking responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So his mom gets him a tutor, and so over the next 6 months, he goes from a 4th grade reading level to like a senior high school level.
Just one thing, we should just interject. We skipped a lot of the stuff too, but like when he was in school, like he was constantly getting letters because he was falling behind, and then he went the complete easy route, and he started cheating. He's cheated like almost throughout all of high school. He's like, well, and I found a way that I could just do well and not be bothered or whatever, and it was just through cheating. So he's like, he cheated his way through school. So he did for a long time, took the easy way out. But then he realized that didn't help me at all. It just made everything harder. It's making everything worse. It's good. It's, again, we've talked a lot about this before. It's like your short-term goals versus your long-term goals, and we often do things that are against our long-term goals for that short-term gratification. And that short-term gratification is like, oh, I could just cheat and get it perfect on the test. But your long-term goals of getting into the Air Force or whatever, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're not learning things that you need to learn.
Because then he failed the ASVAB. So
exactly. He's like, oh shit, I gotta get my shit together.
Yeah. So he has.
What better than to shave your head, start dressing up in a white T-shirt and jeans and whatever,
respectable,
and start taking care of your room. It's funny too. This is way before any like Jordan Peterson stuff of clean your room. He's like, I got to make sure I got to clean my room. I got to do the dishes. I got to cut the grass, just take care of my chores, go to school, sit in the front of the class. I don't know if he did that, but all those kinds of things to just be responsible.
So he had one more try to take this ASVAB test, and he took it and he passed. So, and then he joins the Air Force, and he wants to go into pararescue, But the problem is part of pararescue is doing water confidence training, and the guy's negatively buoyant, never taken a swimming lesson in his life, and kind of afraid of the water. And so he did not do well at all. And he's trying his hardest, but like, you know, they have so many different things they have to do in the water, like treading water with just their feet, but keeping their neck above, all of these things. And he was having such a hard time. He was dreading it. He wouldn't sleep because he was having anxiety about it.
He says he got tested or whatever, that he's negatively buoyant. So for something, he has his bone destinies or whatever. It's just harder for him. And then it's harder for him to stay afloat. Yes. He said something too, is like, maybe it's a genetic thing where black people are on average more negatively buoyant than white people, which is maybe why you don't see a lot of black guys in the Navy, or at least in the SEALs, because it's even harder, because your whole training is like so intense, and it's all in water. Like, it's crazy. So anyways,
so he had a blood test, just part of like the Navy or the Air Force, like blood tests, and it showed that he had the trait. He didn't have sickle cell, but he had the trait. He carried the genetic trait for it. And so at that point, they kind of gave him a choice, because they weren't sure. There was some evidence to suggest that it could lead, even just having the trait could lead to like sudden cardiac death.
Right.
So they were kind of like, well, you have this trait. This is what we don't know if this is going to happen or not. So we're just going to kind of leave it up to you if you want to pass on the pararescue training or what you want to do. And he decided to pass.
Right. So he quit, basically.
Yeah, so he quit. And so he served 4 years in the Tactical Air Control Party, which is just, he was liaising between Special Forces and then air support. But he wasn't proud of anything he did there. Right. So any opportunities that came, he just didn't really see them for what as opportunities. Right. And he just basically wanted to do his 4 years and get out, because he knew in his heart he had quit. And it was a shame.
There's one thing that he mentions often in this book too, which we don't do justice here, is he talks about when people quit, it's like they make the decision to quit even before they did the quit. And he says some stories too where, you know, he was in that doctor's office and he's like, I got that ticket that I was kind of looking for to make myself be able to get that out. Yeah. Because he was like he had already made the decision like a month before to quit, right? But this was just kind of the way. And he was saying too, like when he was going through his training, like Hell Week or whatever, that he sees that in other people's eyes. He's like, he's like, I know when people are going to quit because I see in their eyes, and they're like, you know, the trainer's like, oh, I know you're cold, but you know, why don't you just ring the bell and quit, and I'll get you some nice warm soup and you can have a blanket and you'll be all good. And he's like, he knows, he's like, I know who's gonna. So it's interesting to read it and to kind of understand the psychology that goes in your brain, so that you can recognize in yourself, oh, well, when am I having negative thoughts that are going to lead me to quitting, right? So anyways, it's really fascinating stuff. It's like he does psychology stuff, but he's not a scientist at all, so he doesn't talk science at all. But it's like, it's just experience. You know, if you talk you know, if you talk to a psychologist, you're like, well, this is what this means and blah blah blah. It would lay it all out. So it's interesting. After
getting out of the Air Force, and just to give some context, so he is 6'2", and when he was in boot camp for the Air Force, he was 175 pounds. Right. When he gets out, he starts just working as, it's like in this shitty pest control night job where he's working nights, going to these restaurants. And by this time, he had gone into like powerlifting, and he was like putting like a lot of weight on. And by the time he's at this pest control, he's like 300 pounds. Yeah,
he's putting on way more fat than muscle. Yes. He's putting on muscle, but I mean, he's 300 whatever pounds, or just 300 pounds. He's a big boy. I'll see if I can put a picture up of what he looks like.
And then to give you an idea,
he does not look like a muscular.
No.
He's a muscular guy.
And to give you an idea, so he would come home after his night shift of like, you know, killing cockroaches and rats in these restaurants, which is disgusting. He would on his way home, he'd get a large milkshake and a box of donuts, and then he'd go over to his mom's house for his quote unquote staple, which was 8 cinnamon rolls, 6 scrambled eggs, bacon, and 2 bowls of Fruity Pebbles. So this is what this guy's eating. It's just junk.
Fruity Pebbles.
So then on one day, he's having a shower or something like that, and he hears this TV show, and what this TV show is about Navy SEAL training. So Navy SEALs are like the special operators within the Navy. Right. Each section of the military has special operators, and so Navy SEALs are special operators for the SEALs. Yep. And so a SEAL is sea, air, and land, so that's where they operate. And so to become a SEAL, you have to pass the ASVAB and have certain scores in the ASVAB.
Yeah.
And then you have to have a specific weight for your height. And then you have 6 months of...
If you pass that.
If you pass that, then you have 6 months of BUDS training, which is an acronym for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL training.
Yeah.
And so that's 6 months, and part of that 6 month training,
well, there's the famous 1 week
is Hell Week.
Yeah.
And Hell Week is basically you don't sleep for a week, you're completely battered, they're forcing you're on a boat crew where you have 6 of you, like carrying a boat everywhere, you're carrying logs, you're running up and down the beach, you're in cold water all the time.
Just think of the most physically demanding thing that you think you can put yourself through.
And it is one of the most like demanding special operator trainings.
And like you have like world-class athletes getting there and like quitting after like a day.
Yeah, the attrition rate is huge.
Yeah.
So
the one thing you said though, they feed you really, really well. You're constantly eating because you're burning like a million calories a day, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so he's watching this program is about the SEALs during Hell Week. And he says they were swollen, chafed, sleep deprived, and dead on their feet, and I was jealous of them. The longer I watched, the more certain I became that there were answers buried in all of that suffering, answers that I needed. So he eventually is able to find a recruiter that's going to help him get into the SEALs training.
Because you have to understand, here's this 300-pound out of shape guy saying like, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And they're like, come on. You know?
So he has to get a higher score on the ASVAB. So he has to study his ass off to get this higher score. But then he also has to lose weight. And so the max weight for his height to get in is 191 pounds and he's 297.
Yeah.
So he has to lose 106 pounds in 3 months in order to get in. And so, he does it.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah. I think what he does is he studies and he writes the test.
Yes.
Because he's like, well, there's no point in me losing the weight if I write the test and I fail, then I can't get in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's still point in losing the weight because you don't want to be unhealthy. But so he studies really hard first and then he passes the test and then he's like, okay, you passed the test. So you're going to go to the BUDS training, right, in 3 months, but you have to meet that weight or whatever, or something like that.
He studies at the same time.
Yeah, he does both. But he passes the test, and then he still has like a couple months or whatever to lose the weight, and that's when he focuses. You hear all the training he does to. Maybe we'll talk about what he does. He says
his typical day started at 4:30. He'd study for the ASVAB, then he'd take the book to the stationary bike at 5 a.m. bike for 2 hours, then go to the pool and swim for 2 hours, then do circuit training at the gym, then bike for 2 hours, have a supper, which was just like chicken and vegetables, and then go back on the bike for another 2 hours. Yeah. So he was just like a machine.
He's just always moving is basically the thing too. Yeah.
Basically.
And the thing too is I think he's saying, I was on the bike and whatever. I don't think he was even like going super, super hard, right? It's like, he's like, I don't know. I think he was just like, you just got to keep moving too. So if you do have a lot of weight and you want to do the David Goggins approach, I mean, just keep moving, right? So just go on a bike because it's like, imagine going on a bike while you're watching TV, right? At least you're biking, you're moving your legs. You don't have to have it on max because you'd burn out too much if you're going that hard for like months. It's impossible. But yeah, he says some crazy stories where he'd go to the gym and he'd do like 2 hours of gym. He's like, he's like, one day I quit where I didn't do that extra last pull up, and like he'd go home and he'd be like, oh, I felt so bad. Then he'd go back to the gym and do the whole set all over again. I'm like, you're crazy.
He is
like
crazy.
That's his mentality of like if he cheats himself, he feels so bad about it that he has to go back and like redo everything, right?
So obviously he makes it and he gets into BUDS.
Right.
So he starts his first Hell Week, and so Hell Week is like the 3rd week into
the
BUDS training,
months,
the 6 months training.
Yeah.
So he ends up getting really sick and like getting diagnosed with double pneumonia. Right? However, there's funniest story where sometimes either you're carrying a boat with your boat crew, you're carrying a log with your log crew. So they take him out because they're like, he needs to go to medical and get checked because he's not well. And so
because he's like coughing up blood or probably
it's awful. And so all of a sudden they turn around and they're like, where the heck is this guy? And so they're on the radars like, where the fuck's Goggins? Like, where's Goggins? They're like, he's on the log, get him off the log. They bring him back and they're like, oh, he's gone again. Like he's constantly just trying. So what happens is then, because he has double pneumonia, he gets rolled, and so he has to go back to like another class and start again with another.
So they have a class maybe once every 6 months or once every 8 months or something like that.
I don't know how it works, but so he goes into the next class to do this the second go round, and he goes into Hell Week again, and this time he's just like, he comes up with this thing called taking souls.
Yeah.
And so basically it's like whatever they give him, he just like uses it as like fuel to like do whatever they ask him to do in this Hell Week, and almost like he enjoys it to a point, right? Like, because even at one point the instructors are saying everyone is punished except for you, Goggins, because you like it too much.
I think it's a way to say like it's a big F you. He's like this is dangerous. It could actually piss people off and rub people the wrong way, because it's like you almost laugh at someone's face when they're trying to punish you or whatever. And I think he says something too. It's pretty crude. He's like when it's like, because we're like working and we're suffering this whole Hell Week or whatever, and it's like all the instructors are there, you know, they're having a good time, they're having their beers, and they know they're going to go home with their wives or whatever. He's like, I want those guys when they go home to the wives, it's like they're thinking of me or whatever. It's like they're not even going to want to have sex with their women because I'm in their head, you know. He's like, I want to be like that guy. It's like so they can't get me, they can't get the Goggins or whatever.
Because that whole Hell Week, it is really like a mental game.
Oh, it's all mental
because
game.
It's all mental, and then because they goad you on into like, oh, you want like you want to quit, like ring the bell.
But it's like good cop, bad cop. They'll be like yelling at you, oh, you fucking maggots, you got to do blah, blah, blah. It's like, who the hell? And then if they see someone kind of struggling, they're like, listen, I know this is hard. I understand. Just, you know, maybe this isn't for you. You'll get your nice hot bath.
Yeah.
We'll take care of you. It's okay. I understand. It's okay if you want to quit. You know, so then they goat people on like that, right? They use all that psychology.
Yeah. So the whole, like, he gets through Hell Week, and this was like a huge kind of breakthrough for him to understand this whole kind of taking souls, like concept that he's built for himself, and what he himself is capable of. The problem comes, however, his knee is in such bad shape. It's so swollen. So he keeps going through the part of like the next part of the training.
But like he finished Hell Week.
And then he starts the next part of the training.
So what they have too is after Hell Week, it's the 1 week, it's almost like a walking week where it's time to recover. But then he like was still on crutches, and he just couldn't even heal his knee at all in that whole 1 week.
So he's doing some training, and then it's like he can't walk. He has to go to medical. They do an x-ray on his knee, and they find out like, he fractured his kneecap. So they again have
roll
him again. So now he's going back. So
you have 3 strikes and you're out.
And then you're out.
This
is his last chance to get this goal. So he has time to heal his kneecap.
Until the next Hell Week.
Yep. So he goes to the next Hell Week, and this time I think it was either the second time or the third time, he was just like, guys, like, we got to steal the schedule, because if we steal the schedule for Hell Week, then at least we know mentally like what's coming next and how long things are going to last.
Right.
So he's kind of strategic going into that third one. And so, but in the third Hell Week, he also says he knew what the human body could take. I knew what I could take, and I was feeding off that shit. So he's, like I said, just like using it as fuel.
Yeah.
What happens with this Hell Week, though, is one of his classmates dies. Yeah. So they end that Hell Week early.
And he's like, the instructors weren't happy about that because they like putting people through Hell Week.
Yes. And so what happens, though, is they didn't get a walking week. They only got like
2 days.
They only got like 2 days. And so why this was a problem, though, is because his shins were just covered with small fractures.
Right. So he talks about like running on 2 broken legs, basically is what he says. So, but it's good way and a bad way, because he was starting to get another problems with his legs. So I think he was thinking like, maybe I'm not going to be finished again, because I might have to get medically washed out again, and then I won't make it. Yeah. So because he only had to do like 3 days of Hell Week instead of the whole week, he could have gotten lucky. Yes. Because that whole Hell Week, you're carrying the boats, you're running up and down miles and miles with like 60-pound rucksacks and whatever, and you're running in these boots, and you're running in sand. Like it's nasty on the body, right? So so he's good and bad that he didn't have to do it, but then also didn't have enough time to recover. But last time he did 1 week was not enough time to recover either. So and again too, like this whole 6 months after, it's not like it's easy. Just because it's not Hell Week, you're still it's
still hard. It's
crazy PT, crazy revolutions in the pool where you have to swim lengths all the time with like
tie knots, hold your breath on tie knots.
You're carrying bricks and whatever, and you got all this equipment on you that you know.
It's nuts.
And you're putting you on the brink of drowning. Like it's
and
crazy.
He said like in a typical week they ran 60 miles.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's tons of running. So so he just like tapes up his shins and his ankles and like immobilizes them, and then manages to get through. So he becomes a SEAL. They do a lot of stuff in Southeast Asia.
We're skipping a lot, and then he passes. Like it's intense, but you know.
So he's in Southeast Asia when they're training like other elite military units, and they even trained the Thai Navy SEALs that saved those kids in the cave, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's 13 Lives. Yeah, it's a movie that just came out. You should watch it. It's pretty cool if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. So then he goes to screen for what's called development group, and so it's kind of like the elite group within the SEALs, and so they were the ones that killed Osama bin Laden.
Right.
So he screens
like the best of the best.
Yeah, sorry. So he screens for that. He gets in, but he also wanted to go to Army Ranger School, which is again another elite group within the Army.
Right. Because wasn't he at this point being like, I just want to keep looking for the best of the best? Yes, it's like, I want to find the hardest motherfuckers in the world.
Kind of thing, right? Among uncommon.
Right,
men. That's
exactly.
what he talks about. So he goes to Army Ranger School. And the thing about Army Ranger School is it's really about like the leadership. You're really taught really good leadership things.
Right.
And so, that's his big thing, is about being uncommon among uncommon men. He says life will present you with similar opportunities where you can prove to be uncommon. So that's what he does. So he goes to Ranger School. Ranger School, probably even worse than SEALs.
Yeah.
He lost 56 pounds in 69
days. Because Hell Week, it seems like I think for me listening to it, I think I would rather do Hell Week than this other one, because Hell Week at least there's all kinds of food.
You're not
steaks,
fed
whatever.
at Ranger School.
Yeah, right. You're not fed. You're out in the cold. You have to navigate everything with you're just constantly freezing and then hungry as well too. Yeah. And he's like, guys are convulsing, and it's like the smell of us, because it's like we're just burning muscle.
It was so gross.
Not because there's no fat left on us at all. And he's like, once they passed or they finished, he's like, all they did for like 2 days is just like pizza, donuts to try to fatten us up before like our family would come see us, because we just look like skeletons. It's crazy.
It was nuts. So once he's done that, he goes back to his SEAL platoon, and they put him in charge of physical training.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Because the guy's a savage.
Yeah.
And so he, for a week, he just puts them through these crazy things, and then
puts them through hell. It's like his own hell week.
And so then all his superiors have to take him aside and say, like, look, you got to dial it back, because no one wants to do this stuff. Like, it's too hard. You're going crazy. And so that's when he was just like, I was so disgusted with these people, because he's like, there's a phrase for that mentality. It's called getting soft, and that I could not abide. And so the thing is he says this, he's like, I didn't take it as an opportunity for leadership. Like, my leadership capability broke down. Like, I should have been inspiring them, but he's like, instead I just saw weakness and I lost respect for them.
Yeah. He goes through a lot in this book of like, even though he gets to a certain point where like, wow, that's amazing, but he recognizes and understands that he still has a lot to grow, because there's lots of things that he didn't do well, right? Because that's not leadership right there. And he recognized that. That's like, and then that's how I think he might have got himself into a little bit of trouble in terms of either with his superiors or whatever, of like rubbing people the wrong way, because he would be like looking down on people if they're not going to spend their time working out or being really hard. So one thing he didn't realize too, because he always talks about being the only. So I don't know if he's like one of the only black guys in this whole thing. So he didn't understand too that the Navy, like the SEALs, is like a brotherhood too. So like all the guys would go after the bar, they go drinking, whatever, but then he wouldn't go. The superiors or whatever, like, we got to be a team, right? We got to come together as that stuff. So when he just thought of it like a waste of time, or that's just, like you said, getting soft. Yeah. So there's things that he learned along the way, like when he did all these other different trainings at like armies or whatever, the Rangers, and it's like, kind of learning how to be a leader and how to take people and like inspire people to come together. Because I mean, you're in the army and you're in battle. You have to come together as a team, or else you're all gonna die, right? Like it's life or death, right? You got to be able to trust them. Yeah. Like your brothers, just like you see in movies, Band of Brothers and all that kind of stuff. So and this is even more, because this is like super elite, because they're like the warriors that are out there. So
yeah. So Operation Red Wings happened when he was doing airborne school. He was
sorry, Operation Red Wing is Osama bin Laden?
No. I'll get to it in a minute.
Okay.
Operation Red Ring happened.
Right.
And so he was at airborne school learning how to like static line jump and just like free fall jump out of planes. And
That's so cool.
He was there with Morgan Luttrell, who was also a SEAL, and Morgan Luttrell's twin brother, Marcus Luttrell, was in this Operation Red Wings. I don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but basically Marcus's whole platoon was killed by the Taliban, and he was like the lone survivor. Yep. And so he wrote a book called Lone Survivor, and then the movie Lone Survivor was also made about this.
With Mark Wahlberg.
Yes. And so what happened is they go in to try and recover the bodies and save Marcus, and they all get killed. The people the special operators, SEALs that flew in, everyone was killed in those helicopters.
Yeah,
it was
in the movie.
Yeah, and so it was the worst loss of life of special operations in the history of the U.S.
Special operations for just the Navy, though, or any of the special group?
Any. Yeah.
Because those guys usually don't go in there and get slaughtered because they're the cream of the crop. They're so highly trained, you know.
So it was a huge event that happened, and so he heard of this and he wanted to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which provides money for education for the kids that are left behind. From the people that died.
The father died.
So
just before you get into that, just one reason why the audiobook is so great, because he goes into some stories behind these people, and he goes into the stories of those two twins. And he just tells the story of like, oh, these guys are so crazy because one of them was in the Hell Week before the other one for whatever reason. And he's like, oh, they're just so stupid that that one of them switched places with the other guy. It's like, oh, I'll just do your run for you because he was a better runner. And then he's like, oh, it just ended up that the one he got stuck, so he had to do the whole day of Hell Week for the other guy. It's like these are the shenanigans that these guys will get into, right? So you just think of even though you're going through all kinds of crazy stuff, but just the brotherhood and the pranks and shenanigans, like he said too, they stole the goddamn whole playlist for a Hell Week, right? Like, it's just, you do stupid shit like that too. It's not like it's super clean or whatever.
Exactly.
So anyway, raising money for the children of the victims.
And so because he's Dave Goggins and he doesn't do anything in half measures, he's like, oh yeah, well, I want to run this ultra race called the Badwater 135, which starts below sea level in Death Valley in the summer, the hottest place on earth, runs across Death Valley, and then
the hottest, it's like 50 degrees plus, and then even more with the Humidex.
Gains 8,000 feet to the top of Mount Whitney, where it ends.
So the altitude.
So that's what he wants to do.
But he's just I'm a SEAL. There's no problem at all.
So he emails the race director, and you have to apply for this race. You can't just sign up. You have to apply, and they have to approve you. So he contacts the guy, gets his commanding officer to contact the guy and say, can you just make an exception? This guy's a Navy SEAL. Just let him in.
We're not like you civilians that.
So the guy's having none of it. He's like, no, fuck you. Like, you have to have at least ran a 100-mile race to apply for it. And so he's like, and by the way, there's a 100-mile race near you in San Diego in 3 days. So go ahead.
So this guy tells David, it's like, listen, it's like, you're a tough guy. Okay, well, go run this 100-mile race. It's happening on the weekend, and it's like Thursday. Go do it. So David's like, fuck yeah, I'll do it, no problem.
So not only does he's like, I'll do that one, and it's just like a 1 mile loop. He has to run 100 times.
It's like, think of the most unopposing scenario. It's like a track. I think maybe it would have been indoors. It
was outdoors.
It was outdoors, but it's just a 1 mile loop.
It's easy run.
It's no hills, or maybe there might have been a slight incline, but it's just like
it's nothing.
It's nothing, right? The easiest terrain you could possibly imagine.
And then so he's just like, cool. So the night before, he sees his commanding officer in there, and his commanding officer's like, come on in.
He was just going home, and then he passed by the gym, and then he happened to see that guy. SBG, I think his name was.
So they go and they do this like crazy leg workout. They're like quivering, jello, and then the next day he goes to attempt this 100. It's 100 mile, and you have 24 hours to run 100 miles in, and so he's like, oh cool. So he goes with his wife. He gets a lawn chair, a box of Ritz crackers, and then like a protein drink. So he's like not even knowing how to fuel for this thing.
No preparation whatsoever. Has no idea what's going on.
No idea. So he's just, by like mile 70.
But he goes out of the gate too. He's like, bam.
He goes
and like
fast.
he's running. He's like leading the pace kind of thing.
It's like, no.
It's like, what are you doing?
How you do.
Yeah.
So he's in so much pain by mile 70
even before that, I think once he hits mile 30 and 40, I think then he's like, oh,
he's hurting.
But then
so mile
70 is where things really break down.
He goes to sit down in the chair and he just shits his pants.
Yeah.
There's like diarrhea everywhere and he's pissing blood. Like it's horrible.
Or it's like he calls like this brown, red, frothy, whatever, disgusting. Just
his feet are a complete disaster. They're blistered. Toenails have come off. Like it's so bad. So he comes up with this concept of the cookie jar. He's got to get it back out there. He's got to prove this race director wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think the whole thing, he's like, now I'm hearing that guy's voice in my head. It's like, oh, no shit.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So
and he's like, that guy knew it. He called my bullshit and he was absolutely right.
He was absolutely right. So he thinks back to when his mom, when they were so poor, she always had this cookie jar. So they always had these cookies. And so that's the kind of concept he comes up with is all of the accomplishments, all of the things that he was able to overcome go in this cookie jar. Yeah. And so that's what he uses to fuel himself to get through the 30 miles because he's like, I don't know if I did 100 miles. So he does an extra.
Yeah, I did an extra. So, but the thing too is like, he's not running this. He's like walking very slowly, and I think there was a time when he was at like 80 miles. His wife was like, listen, David, you're not even gonna make the time if you don't speed up or at least walk faster, because he was like walking around, I don't know how it took like half an hour or more to do like one mile walk around the track. So he ended up doing it in 19 hours, right? And then the thing is like, it was like, okay, I'm done. And then he went to go sit down, and it's like, the wife saw that there was an emergency that was going to happen, because she's just like shitting uncontrollably, whatever. So she just grabs the coats and covers him up and just drives the truck or whatever, throws him in, gets him into the shower at home, and he's just laying down in like fetal position in the shower, just rinsing off. And I don't know what you want to call it. Like she's a nurse, right? So she called the doctors or whatever and said like, this guy's on a kidney failure. You got to take him to the hospital emergency room, or he could die. And then Goggins like, no, just leave me here. Let me just enjoy the suffering or the pain. It's like, I earned this or whatever. So that's the kind of mentality he has. What I find really great about this part of the story is that he was like so proud of himself for doing this. So he waited till like Monday or whatever to call this Chris guy or whatever. Chris is the guy who was the race director. And he's like, well, I did it. So he's like, look at me. I did 100 miles in 19 hours or whatever. And then I guess he's on the phone with this guy.
No, it was an email.
It was on an email, But the guy's like unimpressed. He's like, listen, David, that's great that you did it, but the point of a 24-hour race is to run for 24 hours. So, why don't you just just throwing it right back? And Dave's like, what the fuck? This guy. So, but then he was just like, he said, okay, well, why don't you see if you can run a few more races before then, and then I'll consider your application. Because I think he did a few more like 50-mile or 60-mile races. He did
one in Hawaii. I forget how long that one was, but I think it was like 100-miler. Yeah, so he did that one as well.
Yeah. I don't. Was it 100 miles? I thought it was. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But he just did one or two more to just pad up his resume, right?
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing was, it was only like a few weeks after he did that 100-mile, his first 100-mile one. Him and his mom and his wife, they had all signed up for the very first Las Vegas marathon.
Was that? I thought that was like way after. I thought that was.
No, that was right after that first one. So they had signed up, and he was just like, there's no way. Like I'm still recovering from this 100-mile. Like I'm not doing it. He's like, I'll just walk with my mom for a little bit, because his mom was gonna walk. And so the gun goes, and like, something clicks in his head. He's like, fuck it.
I just ran. Just bolted. It's like, what are you doing?
Not only does he run, but then he's able to qualify for Boston, which is, if you're a runner, Boston is like the pinnacle race, and you have to have like a qualifying time, and even that doesn't even mean that you get in. So he was able to qualify for Boston in the process.
I thought that was way in the future, where he was like, because he was getting like dizzy and he had problems with his chart. Okay.
Not this
but anyways,
one.
Well, not this problem. He has lots of problems.
But what it showed him is like, again, what we're truly capable of. And he goes to this, like, we only use 40%. Like when we say we're done, we've only put in 40% of our effort.
Approximately. When you think you have nothing left, you've actually only given kind of 40%. You could do way more.
Yeah.
And what's also really fascinating about this guy is, in terms of like, you can do things that you never thought were possible, is he has at this point, even though he does multiple of these 100-mile races or what have you, he doesn't even really know anything about proper nutrition. He doesn't even know about right shoes to wear, like any of this stuff to make his life easier. He still does it. So like imagine if like his technique is running, he's like runs like horrible. A lumberjack kind of thing, you know, so inefficient.
Yeah.
So like if you can do that when you have no training in that specific sport or what have you. I mean, obviously he has training in, but he has training in doing things that are so painful and uncomfortable. He has that mind training, I think, to block out the pain and to get hard, as he always says.
Well,
right?
And like he says, it's like callousing your mind.
Right, exactly. Exactly. You do it so much that you know how to take out all those negative thoughts and don't have them and fill them up with, whether it's your cookie jar or whatever, to keep yourself going, to be able to shut down that part of your brain that is telling you to stop or to quit because you're pushing. So, pushing too hard.
And then, so he trains for Badwater because I think he has about 5 months to train for it. And what's amazing is he comes in 5th. And the year after that, he comes in 3rd. So it's really cool. So he continues on with like all these like ultra races. And he eventually does the Ultraman, which we talked about, which is in Hawaii. And we talked about that with Rich Roll. And the cool thing is that that's what Rich Roll saw. He saw that Goggins had done this, and it inspired him then to do this ultra. To train for this
and Rich Roll, if you don't remember, he's the guy that I think
he was an alcoholic.
He was alcoholic. Was he into drugs too, or whatever?
Just alcohol.
Well, I mean, it's a drug anyways. Yeah. But and then it wasn't until he was like 40 around then when he decided to turn his life and lose weight and get healthy. And I don't know if he was really big or whatever, but definitely unhealthy. He was definitely unhealthy. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I could. This guy can do all these marathons and triathlons, whatever. So why can't I?
Yeah. Yep. And he's still in the Navy at this point. And at this point, they've put him into recruiting. So he's going around to all these different schools and speaking to these schools and universities, and just like trying to recruit them. And so he tries to incorporate like ultra runs when he's there.
Yeah. He's a guy that lived the Navy ethos
100%
to perfection, right? Because some guys, I think, we're saying that, well, some people, he was upset at other people because they weren't kind of living easily. It's like, I went through hell week and I did whatever, but then now I let myself go, or not that they're fat or anything like that, but they're just like, just maintain. Yeah, they never really work hard anymore. He would be so crazy where he would when he'd go visit his school, he'd make sure that there was like a 100-mile race or some double marathon or something really crazy that was there, so that he would talk to the students and like either he would go from there to run this marathon, or he'd run it and then go talk. And then like he's like sweating and talking, like you said, he does. Even sometimes he's just doing pull-ups the whole time
while he's doing his speech, his thing.
And he ended up being like one of like the top like recruiter because he's living like he puts his money where his mouth is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The sad thing though is he gets to a point where he's running and then he has these like crazy like arrhythmias, like his heart rate's going all crazy, and so he goes to the doctor and they find something's wrong. Like it's unreal. They find he has this like giant hole in his heart. He was born with it, and it's like you have to think he's only getting like 50% of the necessary oxygen to his muscles, and he's doing all of this, right? And it's like, what could this guy do if his heart could he have done? Yeah, it's unreal to think about.
Because I think too, what he was saying is that like after every race, he'd have to be either he's in his hotel room or whatever, and he had like this Gatorade bottle, and he's just spitting up like this mucus this whole time. He's like, I just thought this is what you do after a race, right? Like it was like really sick, yucky, really. Yeah.
So it takes 2 surgeries to correct it. The first one was kind of botched, and then so finally the second surgery.
And just gloss it was like kind of botched. It's like someone fuck up a heart surgery. Like that's not good, right? It's
not good.
Because the thing was his resting heart rate when he was really active was around 30 something. He was in the low 30s beats per minute. Yeah. But then it was at this point it was like in the 150s, 170s, like resting or whatever, right?
Yeah. So
something's wrong there, that's for sure.
So then because he couldn't run, he's like, cool, I need to find something else crazy to do. And so he's like, well, I'm gonna break the world record.
break up the band.
I'm gonna break the world record for the amount of pull-ups you can do in 24 hours. Right. So the record was at that time 4,020. Yeah. So he attempts this 3 times to pass this record. And the cool thing about the chapter talking about him breaking this record is he fails twice to do it. Right. But he always talks about how he did an after action report, which is what they do in the military. Yeah. And so basically like dissecting what went wrong, what went right, what went wrong, how can I fix it, and how can I like do another attempt, basically, which I think is so important because failure is going to happen in life. You have to expect it, but you can't let it like beat you down. Like you have to learn from it. That's the point of failure.
Exactly.
So that's what I loved about that chapter.
Something that we should all take into consideration and take into account with all aspects of our lives. Oh, it's like, well, you didn't get that job that you wanted. What happened? Why do you think? How did the interview go? What questions were you not maybe as prepared for? You know, just analyze the situation and be as open and as honest as you can, so you can figure out how to move forward. Oh, I didn't get that promotion at work. Why didn't I get that promotion? Right? Yeah. Or even like, oh, well, this relationship broke up. Or it didn't work. Why didn't it work out? Well, she was kind of always telling me to pick up my shoes off the floor, and I kind of never really did. What is it that I did? You know, or all those kinds of things. Think of anything in your life that didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. Just write out in detail. It doesn't have to be in detail. Just like make a few points. Yeah. And figure out what went wrong. Yeah. And so it doesn't happen again. Yeah. And that's how you better yourself. That's how you become better. Yeah. So if these great organizations, these military organizations do that so that people don't get killed after, then I think it's pretty good to transfer into your personal life where the stakes aren't as high. Exactly. So he does beat it, and so he does 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours. Right. Yeah. Like it's unreal to me. But what's more unreal is the record now is like over 6,000 or something ridiculous like that. It's like, how the hell are you doing that? It's so nuts. So, and again, we just glossed over this. He does a whole chapter on this whole breaking the record stuff. And on the podcast, it's fascinating too, listening to his mentality and everything that goes along, and the training to get it. So it's intense. Yeah. So in 2014, he's training to go back to Badwater. But he feels like shit. He does like his taper, but he feels like shit. He starts to run it. He can't even finish the race. Like he only made it 50 miles. Yeah. He couldn't complete it. And he goes to all kinds of doctors. They can't figure out why he's feeling bad. They think maybe it's his thyroid. They give him some thyroid medication, but he still feels like shit. They can't figure out what's happening. Yeah. And so he thinks he's going to die. Yeah. And he's feeling so bad. His body feels like it's breaking down. Yeah. Like it's just dying. Yeah. And so he's always had this like knot at the back of his skull. That's been getting bigger and bigger over time. Yeah. Same with like on his hip flexors, it's the same thing. And so then it kind of pops into his head. He remembers he had done this kind of class in SEALs where this guy came in and talked to him. He's like an Olympian, and talked to them about how he had healed himself by just doing like all this different types of stretching and mobility work. And so he gives them a lecture, and he says to the SEALs, like, you're probably gonna have to put in like a solid number of hours to kind of just like get back to baseline, but then after that you only need to do like 20 minutes a day of stretching. So then after the lecture, he kind of goes around and is helping different people stretch, and he comes up to Goggins and he's like, he can't move him. He's like, it's trying to stretch like steel cables, like you're gonna have to put in like hundreds of hours. And like most runners, he's just like, fuck that. I'm not stretching. And he's like runner / Navy SEAL / fuck this guy's not gonna fucking tell me what to do. This skinny, 110-pound guy. But now he's just starting to think, and he's like, is it all connected? Is this something that I need to look into? And so so he starts to stretch, and what actually happened was his spine was so compressed he actually lost 2 inches of height at this point. So then he starts stretching, and because he's Goggins, nothing half measures, and he starts, and the first day he stretches for 2 hours, and then the next day it's 6 hours, and so finally, after several months of stretching, the knots get smaller. He starts to feel better. Yes. I think he was even saying like even after the first night, he started to feel better because it's almost like this release, because that's what's kind of stretching is. It kind of releases the tension or whatever that's been knotted up in your muscles. Yes. And I think too, what I really liked is in the book is he just says, while he's thinking back, he's like, could it really be something this simple? Yeah. And what I love about that is like oftentimes there are more natural ways that you can go to in order to fix these ailments that like doctors and modern medicine just has no fucking clue how to fix. Like, oh, try all these kinds of pills and drugs. Yes. Like, he tried everything, right? Going to so many different doctors and try this, try that, oh, medication, this, that. Yeah. And I was like, well, we don't know what's going on, but it's just like, could it be simple? It's just I need to stretch and I need to take care of my body and just be moving. Because like, again, you think of this guy, like he's just doing the heavy bench presses and squats. I mean, those are good exercises to do. Yeah. But if you're not doing anything else to take care of your muscles or to make sure that they're elongated and you have the proper range of motion, because weights by themselves do not give proper range of motion, right? They're just like one things. So I just love the idea of like,
and just running is so impactful on your body.
It's so hard on the body.
It's really
so hard on the body. And it's like, could it be that simple? It's like, yeah, actually it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, all these things of the you know, the fitness industry is like billions and billions of dollars, and like how all the lose weight or whatever. It's like, could it be as simple as just like not eating junk food, or you know what I mean? Or like, it actually is really simple. You know, you don't have to have all these pills and drugs. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2015,
he still stretches like every day. You hear him like, even if it's 1 o'clock and I haven't done my stretches, I'll stretch for 2 hours. I think he stretches at least 2 hours every night.
I think so.
So, but he's the kind of guy that needs to stretch probably for that long. He's probably super. I don't know. I wonder how flexible he is, if he can do like the splits or whatever.
I don't know.
Anyways.
Yeah. So he retires from the Navy in 2015 as a chief, and then he becomes
Chief O'Brien.
Chief O'Brien. He becomes an EMT, and then he goes to firefighter academy, and because he's Goggins, he graduates top of his class, and he doesn't do any just normal firefighting.
No, jump out of a plane firefighting.
Does like wildland firefighting in Montana. And
don't they do like jumping out of plane, parachutes, some stuff?
I don't know.
He certainly could do that.
He's really good. Well, and it's crazy because it's like wildfire, so they have to like dig these like crazy ditches to stop the fire. So it's like super. It's not just holding a hose. Like it's even. I mean that is hard enough, but so it's kind of crazy. So I don't know if he still does that now. I tried to look up, but he doesn't really post much. There's not really anything on his website.
Right.
But what's really cool is he does like a little update on his mom, and she, after everything she had been through, she gets her master's in education. Yeah. She volunteers at a domestic violence task force, and she is a senior associate vice president at Nashville Medical School, which is like, that's amazing.
That's amazing. And it just goes to show, like, no matter what situation you're in, you can always figure out a way to get out of it. It's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be quick and easy.
No one says life is easy. No one says life is fair. No. Life is not unfair. Life is not unfair. Life is not fair.
Yeah.
It just isn't. You know, some people are dealt great hands and do shit with it. Some people are dealt shit hands and do amazing with it, right? It's all up there in the mind and into your heart, and to what you're going to do to become the person that you want to be.
Exactly.
You know, it's tough when people are born in situations that are like, you know, some people are they're just, you know, they have like no chance, which is really sad. But I mean, you know, we're fortunate enough to be here in Canada, you know, in the United States or whatever. Even with all the problems that we have now, we can still, if we want to, we can achieve anything that we want, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I don't know. I was just going to say, and like, and this is what he shows and what he proves. I mean, everything that he's been through, there's no reason he shouldn't be alive, or he should just be some,
well, like he said, he should be a statistic.
Druggy guy, or just even a dealer or a criminal, or who knows, following his father's footsteps, all these kinds of things.
Exactly.
But he didn't. He's a guy that just goes out there and just, I don't know if he considers himself an inspiration guy, because I think he says, motivation is kind of fleeting. It has to kind of come from within, right? Don't use me to motivate you, even though it is motivational. But that might get you to the gym for a day or a week, but you need to have some internal something in there that's sparking you to get up every day to do the work that you need to become the person that you want to be. So
so he's totally. And he's still, like every once in a while he'll post like an Instagram video and he's like running.
He runs the whole time, or he's doing I remember he does pull-ups the whole time, or he's working out while he's giving his little 1 minute like, fuck all that shit that's bothering you, just fucking stay hard. You got to get that shit.
Yeah.
And he's just so like,
he does
no excuses, right?
He does this 4x4x48 challenge every March. And so it's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Yeah. So that's his big, kind of like how he raises, like he still raises all kinds of money for these different foundations, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I think something like that is definitely doable for your average type of person.
And he even says, like, if you can't run, if you're not a runner, then just like exercise or walk for, 45 minutes to an hour every 4 hours. Yeah. So it's just about like doing something.
Right. Or go on the bike or whatever your thing is, or swim. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, that's not bad, right? Like going for a walk every hour, every 4 hours. I think the thing with that, I think is it just pushes you a little bit because of the sleep. Right? Because it's like, well, you got to wake up every 4 hours during the night or whatever, right? So it's a little bit of a challenge, but again, it's nothing like hell we got all, but no. But yeah, so is that something you want to do?
Like kind of.
All right, let's do something. March is still a little bit of a ways, right?
I feel like that would be like attainable. I don't know if I could run 4 miles like that, because that's a lot. That's a lot.
4 miles, yeah, that's like 6K or whatever it is. Stupid miles and things that nobody uses anymore except for America. America. Yeah, well, let's think about doing something like that. Absolutely. Speaking of things, inspiration things that are in this book, I still always think of like Ironman type things or triathlons or whatever. I'd love, again, I can't run at all because I always have my knee and my shins right away. But I mean, if he can do it, I mean, I got to figure out a way how to rehab all that stuff. Yeah, I'd love to do that and figure out how to swim without drowning as well too. Even if it's just like a kilometer, right? Yeah, like it would be really cool. It's just finding the time. If you want to do something, there's lots of time. Hey, listen, everyone. We all have the same 24 hours. This is what I love. Whether you're Bill Gates or he's a bad example because that guy's a fucking. No, but like Elon Musk or whatever, we all have 24 hours in the day. We're on the same playing field. So yes. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, you want to do it? Figure it out. Yeah, figure out the time. We'll see what we can do. Yeah. Maybe there'll be some things that will happen in the near future that'll give us a little bit more time. Maybe. I don't know. What could that possibly mean? Stay tuned. Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins. 1 to 10. Oof. Like 15. See, I was thinking about this the other day because of your whole rating system and how when you give everything a 10, nothing's a 10. I know. Right? So I think you really need to be more like we're gonna have to put a page on our website. Put a page on our website that's like your ratings. But try to be like you know what I mean? It's hard because it's like I've said this before. I'm not going to pick a shitty book, or if I do pick a shitty book, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I understand. So it's hard because I pick all the books we do are just like incredible books. Well, I know, but I guess I have a couple coming up that they're definitely not 10s. And it's hard. Like I feel like maybe we need to just do a better rating system. That's not just rating or like the different categories, like the book as an actual read, maybe like not the technical literacy. I don't know. Or then the thing of like the inspirational aspect of it. I don't know. You don't want to put somebody down on for like, oh, this person's more inspirational than this person. Like I don't want to. I don't think you can compare. But not inspiration, but just almost like how this book maybe would inspire you to do something. I have no idea. We'll figure something out. Because you're right. Like I can't. Everything's a 10, and it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So but this one definitely, because I've listened to the audiobook twice now. Yeah. I actually physically read the book, which was cool because there was like pictures of him in it. Oh, yeah, we have it right here. So so it is, and I like it's so inspiring. His story's unreal. Oh yeah, it's unreal. It's just when you think he's been through enough, no, we're gonna throw a hole in the heart. Yeah. We're gonna have your possible stepdad be killed. Unreal. And there's one story that we never gone through where when he was a kid is horrible. Because when he was a kid, like maybe 9 years old, he remembers that something happened where another kid got ran over and his head and his brain got crushed under the school bus. And he remembers there was stuff splattering on his window. Stop. And just he's just the mom being hysterical. And it's not in the book, but it's in the podcast. So he just talks about all these things that had happened to him in his life that he like because it was so traumatic and whatever. No, it was awful. So like it's just it's awful. He went through so much, and to be like where he is, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think those people went through a lot more with that, like the bomb or whatever. The kid, like, of course. It's just the unimaginable thing happening. But yeah, it's no. But it's I guess the point is like there's so many things like that are not in the book. And that we didn't talk about that are in the audiobook. So like if you do have a chance, just pick it up, because it's very inspirational. I want to say, I don't know if I should say motivational, but it is in a way that if you are one that you are trying to get better in your life, and you are trying to do things, and you want to have specific strategies, because he gives you strategies at every chapter of what you can do. And if you take the time to implement them, I guarantee that you will start to get better and improve in your life. And you have to know that it's a day at a time, and it's not going to be an overnight thing.
It gives you tools, and then it gives you like almost like if I can do it, then you can too. And this is how I did it. And this is the tools I use. So I'm going to give what I learned to you.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's awesome.
And you look at his list of the things that he's accomplished, then
it's unreal.
You know, yeah. Cool. Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. David Goggins. We've talked about for forever. I know. And now we finally done it. So that deserves a high five.
Sure does.
There we go. Yay. Nice and smooth. You didn't lose a beat.
I did not.
There you go. Thank you so much for watching and joining us today and listening.
Yes.
We appreciate it. If you like the stuff that we do, please check out our website, odumandandrea.com, where we have lots of behind the scenes stuff as well, and more stuff coming up all the time, which is very exciting.
It is.
And with that, we'll say thank you for listening, and
have a good week.
We'll see you next time.
Stay hard.